Yes, thank you for this question. And I'm listening to Honorable Nutt, and I'm thinking how similar we are here in Dominica. We have a population probably one tenth of the size of Guyana, of roughly 70,000 people.
Hmm.
Yet our voters list is 74,380 persons. So we have more than the natural population. And there's a reason for that. The reason why our voters list is bloated and contains the names of individuals, quite frankly, we've had a serious migration problem in Dominica. So thousands of those individuals live overseas. The past three election cycles, our government, which is the Dominican Labour Party, has been able to go into that group of individuals who are living overseas and who, according to our legislation, would not have ordinarily qualified to vote, because our laws are very clear that you have to be within the jurisdiction for at least 3 months within the 5 year cycles. You have individuals who have been away for more than that, prolonged periods, yet every time there is election, our government goes overseas and literally bribes people, brings them in, offers them a free chartered ride from New York or Miami by, or via ferry from the neighboring French islands, get them into Dominica and give them $500 or $1,000 to vote. And these individuals overwhelmingly vote the Labour Party, and they've been able to sustain themselves in office that way. And that is the situation we have in Dominica.
External body. Repeat the
Right.
external
Okay.
body.
So we have two sets. Every election cycle, we have the election observers. So we have election
Yes.
observers from the OAS, we have from CARICOM, we have from the Commonwealth, and they've always said that every single election observer team in Dominica have always observed that the elections are neither free nor fair. They've said that
Right.
repeatedly. But for the first time, the Caribbean Court of Justice,
Hmm.
this panel of distinguished Caribbean jurists, they were able to look at the evidence that we provided through our petitions, our election petitions, some of which were dismissed by the courts in Dominica. But having taken a look at the evidence, the affidavits of persons who said, yes, I was given money, the affidavits of the list of persons we knew who were not qualified to vote and who had come in from the United States and elsewhere, they had a chance to look at this, and they were of the firm opinion that the evidence was credible and that Dominica's election is flawed, the process is flawed, and that they opine that elections should not be held in Dominica under the taints that they observed. Unfortunately for us, our government completely ignored this opinion, which came out in 2022, July of 2022, and our government called a snap election in complete defiance of the CCJ, a snap election in December of that year, which we boycotted. And that's the reason why I'm just the leader of the United Workers' Party and not the leader of the opposition, even, because our party decided to, as a last desperate attempt to get electoral reforms, that we had to boycott those elections. And that is what we did. And
Yes.
in the process, our fight for electoral reform has led to the arrest of several of us. Personally, I've been arrested 3 times. I've been jailed as a result of that, of the process that we've gone through, but it's a process that we have been fighting and going through in Dominica. And it's because our government has decided, and our Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit has decided, and he has said so repeatedly on numerous occasions, that he was going to be in office until 2050. So it looks like he's doing
2050.
everything 2050, because
Five
he came in
zero.
50. He came into office at the age of 32, and he's been there for the past 25 years. So he feels that he has this entitlement to remain in office. And he's been able to utilize our police offices, our police force, weaponize the police force against the people of Dominica. He's been able to politicize the judiciary so that when we try to get redress, all our pleas go unheeded. And so that's the situation that we have in Dominica. And we've tried to bring our plight to the international community. We've written to every organization we can think of, human rights organizations, political organizations. We've written to CARICOM. We've done everything
Wow.
possible, humanly possible. We've put our own freedoms on the line to protest against what is going on in Dominica. And eventually, we got some reforms recently, but those reforms, in our mind, does not go far enough.
comprehensive electoral reform in Dominica?
A big part of the reason is what Honorable Norton just referred to, the Electoral Commission. All of that is supposed to be directed by the Electoral Commission, and the Electoral Commission is supposed to be an independent body. But we have the exact same problem here in Dominica. It is three of them appointed by the government, two appointed by the opposition, and the chairman, of course, is appointed by the government. Now, every single commissioner on that electoral commission, they are passport agents. And you probably don't have that in Guyana, but in Dominica, we have a passport selling program where our passports are sold overseas for $200,000. And every single one of those commissioners are passport agents. And so they are protecting their turf. They're protecting the fact that they have to keep selling passports, and therefore they are operating on the behest of the government. So whereas, for example, a lot of progress could have been made if we had an independent commission, then all of that is set aside. So the government of Dominica, after a lot of pressure, they hired a jurist, the former head of the CCJ, to actually do the recommendations for electoral reforms. And at the end of the day, after spending close to over $700,000 to get those reforms, to get the draft legislation that he prepared, at the end of the day, all of that was set aside. And the government decided that it would do its own thing. And its own thing with an eye on ensuring that it maintains as much of the status quo as possible. Because that is their ticket to victory. It is not because they are more popular than us in Dominica. It is not because they've done anything to build the country over 25 years that they have to point to, but they focus almost exclusively on elections and remain in office because they know that the minute that they open up to a free and fair election, they're gone. So their way of protecting their legacy, as they call it, what I refer to as a cheating legacy, is to ensure that they have these rigged elections and to ensure that even when they do reforms, it is a half measure. And I'll give you another classic example of this. Within the legislation that we now have is an important clause that states that the Prime Minister, notwithstanding that he begins the process of confirmation, you need to confirm your name. So we have a process where you will do confirmation. If your name is already on the list, you simply have to say, yes, that is me. Whether you've been overseas for 40 years. And then once you confirm your name, you remain on the voter list and therefore can vote. So the whole residency criteria is gone. It is no longer viable. It's nothing about residency. It is about whether or not you're on the list. So that is the legislation that has been put forward. But importantly, the legislation also allows that if within the 12 months of the confirmation period, that he can call an election. And the list that will obtain is the same old bloated voters list. So we are on tenterhooks here in Dominica, expecting at some point of a snap election. So we may very well have another election cycle where we have the old list and the whole problem of reforms, the whole struggle that we've gone through, all of the arrests, all of the abuse that we've taken as an opposition would have been all for naught.
The date has been set, the 1st of September.
For Guyana, but in Dominica.
Dominica, okay. Sorry.
No, for Dominica, it is really at the fancy and the women fancy of the Prime Minister. You can call it at any time when he thinks we are not ready, or as soon as he gets his machinery in place to bring down his voters. And I saw a comment from one of your listeners who said, "But why do the people keep voting them in?" But that is the problem. A rigged election means you don't necessarily need the support of the majority of the people on the island.
Well, say that again. Say that again, because I want Barbadians to listen. Folks, I want you, as you're listening, even though we do not have that Barbadian representation on here tonight, political representation, I want you to listen carefully and begin to compare and look at what is happening in Barbados and also think of the possibilities based on who we have there in government, okay, and those who want to hold on to power. Think about that. And I want you to keep liking and sharing. I can look and I see what's going on. They don't want this information, and it's a battle we have every night. with these sycophants on here. So we need you from Dominica, share up the live. From Guyana, share up the live. Barbados, you know what to do already. We are fighting them. They do not want you here. Barbados, they don't want you to hear this. They do not want you to hear this tonight. Continue, Dr. Fontaine.
Yeah, so I was making the point that it is not a question of people voting them back. If you have a population that is so economically deprived, and on election time they're given bribes, they will vote. They will most likely vote for you. Because they're bribed into voting. And our people in Dominica have this very, very humbling and honest streak. And vote after voter has told me, if I accept the bribe, I feel compelled to vote for them. Okay, so you have that aspect of it. And you have the other aspect of persons coming in. I mean, if I'm offered $1,000, I leave New York in the morning, I go down, I vote, and I'm back in New York the same night, and I'm $1,000 richer, I will, without a compunction of what's going on, I will do it. And that's exactly what has been happening. So it does not mean that the government is popular or they're winning. The only reason why they're rigging is because they cannot trust a level playing field. That is why you rig. If you're so sure of winning, why rig the election? Okay, so it's not a question of the government being popular and the overwhelming majority of people voting for this government. It's a question of suppressing the vote. It's a question of using every means possible to ensure that they remain in office. It is illegal, it is wrong, it is immoral.
Wow, and your prime minister has been in office for how long?
The party since 2000, so that's 25 years, and he as the prime minister since 2004. So he's been here for 21 years. Two prime ministers before him died in that 4-year period between 2000 and 2004. We lost two prime ministers, and he inherited as a third, and then he's been there for 21 years.
Accountability in place for campaign financing?
There is none whatsoever, and our new legislation, it is also absent. So the government did not do anything about campaign finance reform. So it is open season. They have deep pockets. They have the resources of the state. They've shown in the past their willingness to use those resources. And they figure, well, in the absence of campaign finance reform, that's another disadvantage to the opposition. So that's where we are, none whatsoever. And the government has been unrestrained in their spending. I talked about having to charter. You imagine the millions of dollars it costs to charter planes. When we had the hard evidence in the 2009 general election, at that time it was $14 million that they spent to bring people in through charters, several charters from the United States.
Wow.
And so on. And we suspect that probably doubled in the 2019 general election. So that's where we are. Absolutely no reforms, no campaign finance reform.
So even
notwithstanding, it was a major recommendation by Sir Byron.
Mm-hmm. And nothing there. So you're saying they have deep pockets. So is it just you believe from government resources, or is there do you guys believe there's some other country that is doing it, or where is this money coming from?
No, as far as we know, there is no other country that is supporting this behavior here in government. Neither are there any wealthy individuals from overseas financing the government. We have reason to believe, given the way our CBI revenues are being handled and the lack of transparency, we believe that a lot of that money is channeled through to the electoral process. And that's one of the reasons why we currently have the government in court over the CBI revenues and their use and lack of reporting and lack of transparency and accountability.
So tell me, let's be a little clearer. So you're saying that the selling of these passports, you're thinking that you're alleging that the money some of that money, campaign financing, could be coming from that source?
Absolutely. Because at the very heart of it, the monies are not coming through a consolidated fund as is mandated by our constitution. You have a series of agents, some of them local, but the vast majority living high lives in Dubai and elsewhere, and they have control over those resources. Okay, so it's very easy for them to sell those passports and give whatever they want to the government for use of those things because the monies are not being accounted for. So we know that they have this huge pot of resources. How else do you explain being able to bring in those charters? And during election time, you're able to bring in Burna Boy and all these big reggae artists and all of these major artists from Africa.
So you bring in artists too, because listen, Barbados, listen to what Dominica is saying.
Top of the line, Burna Boy and so on.
You bring in Burna Boy for elections?
Yes, absolutely. They've done all of that. They've done all of that. So that is where we are in Dominica. It is very, very. It's a very difficult situation because we are faced with that situation of not getting campaign finance reform in the legislation and having to deal with this really corrupt government. And I'm just shaking my head because when I listen to Honorable Norton, I see, well, that's exactly what we have in Dominica. It's amazing, the similarities. It's like they're playing literally from the same playbook.
They seemed like they wanted to ban the song because the same thing as a thief man don't like light. He said, spot the light on them. Yeah. But let me. It seems to me, Dr. Fontaine, that Dominica has shifted or is wanting to shift towards a one-party state.
You're exactly correct. That's the feeling that we get because when you begin to jail your opponents, when you begin to suppress the opposition, that's exactly where you are headed. And that is what we have in Dominica. I think we're already there. A lot of people believe that we are in a one-party state. I mean, and that system that we inherited, that Westminster system, the first past the post, is a horrible system. It has not worked for us. And the fact that, when we were in opposition, we had 43% of the popular vote. And even with 43% of the popular vote, we have absolutely no voice in parliament because the majority carries every single time. There is no weight given to 43% of the population. And to me, that is a problem. That is problematic. There must be a way where you have some proportional representation, where the voices of those who are not in government are heard and that they have a say in what is going on. But it's the complete opposite. And in Dominica, where you have a wannabe dictator, someone who patterns his leadership on Hugo Chavez and who talks about being in office until his young son can take over, is already the makings of a dictator. And that is what we have to fight against. And it's classic. So you begin by manipulating the police force. So you know that you have an armed group that will come knock on your door and drag you away, put you into prison without asking questions. That is where it starts. You take away people's voice. You take away the ability to express, concerns. And not only that, persons who support, like, for example, we are trying to build a team for elections. Mm-hmm. Persons who want to support us, they cannot. If, for example, a public servant expresses an interest, they're immediately targeted. They're immediately victimized, denied promotion, denied any kind of upward mobility simply because they support the party. So you have this very systematic process where the government tries to isolate supporters of our party to make sure that they cannot speak, to make sure that their voices are muzzled. And it's only persons with some independence means, like myself, who can really offer themselves for opposition politics early on. We have to wait literally for the last month or so of elections to get our full set of candidates. Because people are just not willing to put themselves up before because they know they'll be victimized. So yes, we are, I would conclude that we are in a very much a state of a dictatorship in Dominica.
Wow, I mean,
and that's why we fight. But we are fighting. We are not taking this line now. We are prepared to fight the government every step of the way, irrespective of the fact that they've weaponized the police force against us. They're prepared to use police, fire live rounds at the individuals, fire live bullets, rubber bullets, and so on. Irrespective of that behavior, we are prepared to stand up and fight.
Between clean governance and willingness to be democratic, and a similar relationship between dictatorship and corrupt government.
Wow. Oh
This is
boy,
this is
this
no,
is
no,
big.
I cannot agree more. In fact,
Yeah, no,
that is
I want to hear your view as well
yes.
about this, whether we should have this regional electoral oversight body under CARICOM. But
Yes,
go right
yeah,
ahead.
Commissioner, but I also wanted to just that last point that was made there. It is true that one of the reasons why they remain in office is because they're so corrupt. They have incomes that are
Mm,
way above the salaries, and then they will have to account for it once they leave office. So how do you not account? The way you do that is by forcing yourself to remain in office, and that's exactly what it is. So the more corrupt they are, is the more they do everything to really remain in office. And the way you do that is you rig the election, you bribe, you treat, you do everything possible to stay in office.
yes.
But with respect to the idea of this commission, I am very wary of CARICOM, and I'll tell you why. These CARICOM missions, they've been to every election in Dominica. They've made recommendations. They've told CARICOM that the elections are neither free nor fair, and yet CARICOM does nothing as a CARICOM body. They don't even hold a special session and say, let us examine those reports. They don't even reprimand the governments. Absolutely nothing is heard about those reports. So, yes, we have great professionals who do their work independently, do it because, they're professionals and they do a professional work. But at the end of the day, it goes to CARICOM and that's where it dies. So I don't know if having a broad observer commission that does the elections in in the Caribbean and reports back to CARICOM, whether that will hold. Unless you change the way CARICOM operates, unless you do away with this old boys club, we'll continue to have the same issues, I'm afraid.
Wow. My last question to you, because I don't want to feel helpless. How can citizens and civil society force governments to implement real electoral reform?
But herein lies the problem.
Mm,
The very institutions that could do something, they've been muzzled, they've been decimated, they've been
mm,
ostracized. So the civil society that you speak about is almost non-existent
mhm.
in Dominica. And I heard the similar sentiment expressed by Honorable Norton. You have a situation where it has been a systematic attempt by this government to ensure that there are no opposing voices. So you really don't have that
One
independent
second, Barbados. One second, Barbados. You heard that? I want Dr. Fontaine to repeat what he just said there a while ago. I hope you remember it. And Barbados, listen to what he's saying. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I was making the point that we have a situation where the civil society organizations are almost non-existent in Dominica. They've been deliberately ostracized and so on. And in fact, even in Dominica, some action was even taken against civil society in terms of having to register some kind of strange registration and so on. Government want information on them. It's almost like they made it extremely difficult for civil
Mhm.
society. So the very same individuals who could serve as pressure groups, they're non-existent. So a lot of the burden really falls on us, the political parties, to do
Mm,
something. So
yeah.
what we've had to do is that we've had to go outside of the borders of the country, appeal to the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, appeal to the UN Commission on Human Rights, appeal to Amnesty International, appeal to the Human Rights Commission. That is how we've been able to try to get some traction, to have those international bodies taking a view on what is going on in Dominica, because our civil society is simply not strong enough, they're not supported, and they're not encouraged.
Dr. Fontaine?
Yeah, no, I tend to agree, given the basis of our democracy, although I must say it is worse now than it was before, because I can
Mhm.
contrast prime ministers in my country. Our first premier after we got associated statehood, who was the head of the current party that's in office now, when he left office after about 10 years, he had exactly $12.38 in his bank account, and he really transformed Dominica. He was a
Mm,
people's premier. He brought Dominica up in terms of agriculture, gave livelihoods to the majority of people in the rural areas. So we've had situations before where you had governance that really cared about the people. Now we have moved away from that, and a lot of it has to do with the attraction of wealth that we've seen. Because if you look at something that's common, the commonality that we see in our leaders today is the pursuit of wealth. Is, in the case of Dominica, it's about building 2 free mansions. It's about saying in a building that you rent costs $64,000 in a country where the average public servant takes home $1,500 a month. So I believe that a lot of what we are seeing now is individuals who are compelled by greed and self-interest, and their focus have now moved away from the public. It's not about serving the public. It's about serving themselves and their friends and staying in office at all costs. So yeah, while the system itself is not the best, in the past we've had individuals who have worked well within the system.
Individuals worked well.
Because their focus was different. It was about people development. It was about looking after the interests of the public. That is now out the window. So that is the system we have. I believe that there needs to be some reforms of the system. I mentioned earlier this issue of the first past the post and just having this complete power in the hands of whoever wins, whether it's by a 1-seat majority. It's as if they want every single person. We have to find a way of giving a greater voice to the opposition parties, a greater voice to those in opposition, and making it more equitable. As it is now, it is not. And we must think about this as we transform within the Caribbean region. There must be more thought. There must be more thinking about how we can better make our democracies work in the best interest of the public.
Has to be solved if we're going to move forward in a profound way.
Yes, indeed. And just to add very, very, very quickly, I do agree with what Honorable Norton just indicated. And for us as well, as a party, having observed what is happening, we have given the people of Dominica our commitment that ours is one, and that's what we have been going all over the country lately. Ours is one of a vision of shared prosperity for all Dominicans. What we're telling is that we have put forward 10 pillars, what we call 10 pillars of development. And within those 10 pillars, we are looking to see how we can generate wealth for all of Dominica, and remove that concentration of wealth in a handful of individuals at the top. Because after all, that is not what government was supposed to be. Government was supposed to be servants of the people. Now our government have become masters of the people. They want to abuse your rights, throw you into jail, do all sorts of things, all sorts of abuses, take the wealth of the country as their own, build mansions overseas, build mansions in Dominica, just an abuse in the people's face. We have offered a vision that will move away from that, one that will have accountability at its core, because we'll be accountable to the people, one that will be transparent, but above all, it's a vision that will ensure that we have some equality within this society of ours.
Yes. Well, someone is asking you, Dr. Fontaine, to talk about CBI, which you touched on it a little bit, but I know this is in the Eastern Caribbean. That's a point of contention at this moment, isn't it?
It is. Absolutely. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I will. In fact, we have taken the government to court, and we've taken the government to court on 3 grounds. One, that all of the revenues earned under the CBI program must be brought in through the consolidated fund. That's number one. Secondly, they have entered into a contractual arrangement with a company called MMC, Montreal Management Corporation, owned by a particular individual who, since he got in that position where he controls effectively the part of the program that falls on the investments. So if you want to invest in real estate and so on, he controls those resources. He's the one that is currently underwriting the funding of the international airport. But that is our money that has gone through him. So we are asking the court to reveal the details of the contract that was entered into with MMC and the Dominica government, because we cannot understand why it is that the government of Dominica feels compelled to allow the lion's share of the CBI revenues to be held by by an individual company or by an individual who, by the way, this individual, since taking that position, we are told, has built 3 skyscrapers in downtown Dubai. So we are not saying that it's Dominica's money he's used. We are always saying is that those skyscrapers came into existence after he got this very lucrative contract with the government of Dominica. So we are asking the court to reveal details of those arrangements. And we are asking for the transparency issues as well, in terms of the giving an account of the number of persons who have obtained passports and the correct count, because as of now, we do not know exactly how much money as we have collected. We estimate that we are short of a few billions of dollars out of that program. And so we are asking the court to intervene in this very important case. And that's coming up on September 30th, because the CBI program has not really worked for Dominica. The government has not used those resources to build up the agriculture. They have not used those resources to build manufacturing. A lot of these monies, we are told, are still kept overseas, and we have not seen the real important or the real impact of these resources in Dominica. And the vast majority of it is just used in recurrent spending to pay public servants. They have what they call a national employment program that puts young people to work on the roadside, cleaning the roads, and they pay them out of that port. So a lot of it is not transparent at all. And because of that lack of transparency, we have gone to court, and we're hoping that the court will rule favorably and we'll be able to get those answers that we seek on our CBI program.
Wow.
Yes, indeed. And I'm very thankful for the opportunity to be able to have this conversation tonight, which I think is needful, because very often we go through in our own countries and think that only exists in our countries. But as we speak, as we explain, we realize that there are certain things that are in common. Now I'm hearing your situation in Barbados. A number of people in Dominica believe that every single Barbadian is solidly behind Mia Motley, and she is this darling of Caribbean politics. But when you listen to what's coming out, you get a different picture. We've had our own issues in Dominica with Mia Motley, and I spoke about it previously on your program when I called in. But I'm just really thankful for the opportunity to be able to communicate what we're going through in Dominica.
Yes.
We have our work cut out for us. We are trying our best to work through the court system, to obey the law, and then to be good, obedient citizens. It is extremely difficult at times, but we try to play by the rules, and we'll do everything possible to convince people that we need to change the government. And after 25 years, we are beginning to feel the weight of this government, literally feel the weight bearing us down. And so ours now is to go out, and we've been doing that. We've really embarked on a really good program of going through all the constituencies, bringing the message, having town halls, engaging the constituents, and really explain to them exactly what kind of vision we have for the country. And we believe that's the way to go. And thanks for the opportunity to be able to share some of that with our regional counterparts and persons from the region. And thank you for what you do. Thank you again for coming into Dominica and taking your time to interview the people in Portsmouth and in Salisbury. That went down extremely well. It was very well received here in Dominica. So thanks a lot for the work that you do, and just want to wish you continued blessings and thanks for having me tonight.
Yes, it's a real pleasure, and I learned so much tonight as well. And I just want to say that tonight's discussion revealed a troubling yet necessary truth, that democracy in our region cannot be taken for granted. Well, we're even learning that we really didn't really have it. The strength of our nation lies not in political dominance, but in political accountability. As citizens, viewers, all of us here tonight, we must demand transparency. That's what we can do. We must educate ourselves, organize ourselves, and hold those in power to account. We're the ones with the handle. That's why they come to us for the votes. We heard it here tonight. It is us that we will have to do it. We must hold them to account, organize ourselves. We must educate ourselves like we're doing tonight. Viewers, stay informed, stay engaged, and above all, stay courageous. When we lose our fear, they lose their power. Don't you ever forget that. Keep strong, keep the courage. We're going to see you again tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, we are logged on. We will deal with all of the local issues that we didn't get to touch on tonight because we were learning. This was no educational for us tonight, and putting our issues within the regional context. Okay, so thank you to everybody, and they're all saying thank you in the comment section. Thank you so much to everybody, and a pleasant good night to you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Fontaine.
Thank you.